My parents refused to help me pay tuition after promising for years, so I dropped out, built a startup, and bought their house in cash. I'm a 26-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, my parents told me, "Focus on school, we've got your college covered." That line was like a bedtime story in our house. It was repeated so often it shaped my entire identity. I wasn't the kid with the best clothes or the newest phone, but I was the smart one. The one who stayed up until 2 a.m. rewriting essays. The one who skipped parties to finish science fair projects. And every time I got tired or overwhelmed, my parents would remind me, "All this will pay off when you get into a good school. Just keep going, we've got you." It wasn't just encouragement. It was a contract. An invisible, unspoken promise that all this effort wouldn't be wasted. I clung to that idea like a lifeline. While my friends were applying for summer jobs or stressing over how to afford college, I never worried. I was one of the lucky ones. They told me not to get a job in high school because it would distract from academics. They told me not to stress about scholarships because we have a plan. And any time I showed doubt or hesitation, it was flipped on me. After everything we've done for you, the least you can do is study. Don't act like we're not supporting you. We've made sacrifices, so I worked harder, pushed myself past exhaustion. I turned down fun, skipped dances, even lost friends because I believed my parents were investing in my future. Not helping myself would have felt like betraying them, but what I didn't realize was they were never investing in me. They were investing in the image of a perfect son they could brag about, and I wouldn't find that out until it was too late. My entire life felt like a checklist that wasn't mine. Straight A's? Check. Honor roll? Check. Perfect attendance? Check. There was no room for curiosity or mistakes, only performance. I became addicted to their approval, like every good grade was a coin I could trade for love. By high school, I was the student teachers bragged about. I worked a quiet part-time job at a local cafe, saved every dollar, and still managed to volunteer for extra credit. My weekends weren't spent hanging out with friends, but catching up on assignments or prepping for college exams. When people asked why I didn't go out more, I'd laugh it off and say, "My parents have a plan for me." And I believed it. They told everyone, "He's going places. He's our investment." At family dinners, my dad would puff up with pride when uncles asked about me. My mom would smile like she'd already won some invisible competition. But when the house emptied out, that warmth disappeared. If I got a 93 instead of a 97, my dad would go quiet. If I took a break from studying, my mom would sigh and say, "Other kids don't waste time like this." Even the smallest mistake, forgetting a chore, missing a call, turned into an emotional lecture about how disrespectful I'd become. It didn't matter how much I achieved. It was never enough. Their love came with fine print. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a person anymore. I saw a project they were managing. I told myself it was temporary, that it would all pay off once I got to college. But soon, I'd learn that the promise they dangled in front of me was never real. I still remember the email. "Congratulations. You've been accepted." I had gotten into one of the best universities in the state as a transfer student. After grinding through 2 years at community college to save money, I finally felt like I could breathe. Scholarships were secured, dorm assignment confirmed, meal plan approved. All that was left was the final piece, the family contribution. The part my parents had promised for years. I walked into the living room with the documents in hand, FAFSA breakdown, remaining tuition, housing estimate. My chest was tight, but in a good way. This was the moment they'd look at me with pride and say, "We told you we'd get you here." Instead, my dad barely looked up from his phone. My mom glanced at the papers and went pale. Then she said it. "We thought you'd just stay at community college. We can't help with that kind of money." I stood there frozen, thinking it was a joke. They'd always said they were saving. They told me not to apply for extra loans, not to work too many hours, not to worry. "We've got your college covered, remember?" Except now, they were acting like that conversation never existed. My dad shrugged. "You should have asked sooner." My mom said, "Maybe you can defer a year? Get a job?" Like this was a casual inconvenience, like I was being dramatic for reacting. I left the room shaking, holding those papers like they were covered in glass. It wasn't just about the money. It was the fact that they looked me in the eye, watched me kill myself to succeed, and then decided, not our problem. And just like that, the future I built my entire identity on started to crack. I didn't let it go. I couldn't. I pressed harder, asked where the college fund went, what happened to the "we've got you" they repeated for years. That's when my mom's tone turned sharp. "You're being ungrateful." My dad chimed in, "Most kids figure it out on their own. Take out loans, get a job, what makes you so special?" It was like I had imagined the last decade of my life. They didn't just forget their promise, they rewrote history. Suddenly, I was the entitled one for expecting them to follow through on their words. Then I started noticing things. A new patio in the backyard, upgraded kitchen countertops, a second vacation in less than a year. I checked the family credit card bill on the shared desktop we used to use. Thousands spent on hotel stays, spa packages, even a cruise. Meanwhile, I was working minimum wage, saving every cent, and now being told to just take out debt. But the real punch to the gut came when I overheard my mom on the phone with her friend. "We just paid Emma's private school fees up front. Wanted her to have options." Emma, my little sister, she wasn't even in college yet. She was 14, already enrolled in a fancy prep school they paid for in full. They had the money. They just didn't have it for me. This wasn't about finances. It was about value, and in their eyes, I wasn't worth the investment. That night, I sat in my room, staring at my acceptance letter, wondering how I went from being their golden boy to a burden they couldn't wait to abandon. And for the first time, I questioned whether they ever loved me, or just loved what I could do for them. I don't even know how long I sat on the floor of my room after hearing about Emma's school. Time stopped, or maybe I just stopped caring. I didn't eat for 2 days, barely slept. Every thought spiraled into the next until my mind felt like it was folding in on itself. All my life, I thought I was building something with them. For them. I was the son who made their holiday cards look good, the name they bragged about in family group chats, the shining success story at church gatherings and PTA meetings. But when it came time for them to actually support me, they vanished. My mom walked in after 2 days and said casually, "Maybe this is a good thing. You've been burning out. Take a year, get a job, figure out who you are." I stared at her in disbelief. These were the same people who scolded me for taking a single day off school with the flu, who warned me I'd fall behind in life if I didn't start college early, who practically forbade me from getting a part-time job in high school because it would distract from academics. Now suddenly, I should just take a year off and work retail? Where was this laid-back attitude when I needed rest? When I was crying over college apps at 3 a.m. and begging for sleep? It hit me like a punch to the gut. They never cared about me. They cared about the image of me, the resume, the college logo, the social currency. And now that I wasn't useful to that narrative, I was disposable. That was the night I stopped being their son in my heart. I was done chasing love that only showed up when it could be posted about. I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. Some part of me still believed there was a version of my parents that would come through, so I asked them to sit down. One last time. I had printed out the payment deadlines, the tuition summary, the loan gaps. I offered to sign a contract to pay them back monthly with interest. I even had spreadsheets, because I knew they cared about numbers more than feelings. My voice shook as I explained it all. I told them I wasn't asking for a handout. I was asking them to keep their word. For once, I spoke from my chest, trying not to beg, but still hoping something in them would soften. Instead, my dad scoffed. Didn't even pretend to read the papers. "You're an adult now. We've done enough." My mom wouldn't even meet my eyes. She just folded her arms and said, "We're not your bank, okay? Maybe it's time you faced the real world." It wasn't even the words, it was how casual they were about it. Like I was someone else's kid asking for a loan. Like they hadn't built my entire life on a promise they now refused to remember. I stood up, heart pounding, and just nodded. No yelling. No slamming doors. Just a quiet walk to my room, where I sat on the edge of my bed with my head in my hands, trying not to cry loud enough for them to hear. That night, I packed a small duffel bag, just clothes, my laptop, and a folder with every award I'd ever earned. Then I texted my closest friend, "Can I crash with you for a bit?" By midnight, I was gone. And for the first time, I truly felt like an orphan with living parents. The deadline came, and I had no choice. No loans approved in time, no emergency grants, no magic rescue. So I emailed the university and withdrew before the semester even began. The minute I hit submit, I felt something break inside me. Not just dreams or plans, something deeper, like the version of myself who believed in safety nets and unconditional love had finally died. Word spread fast. Teachers who once praised me were confused. Old classmates messaged, "What happened? I thought you transferred." My parents? They shrugged. Told everyone I gave up. He couldn't handle the pressure. Didn't try hard enough. I didn't correct them. Didn't tell anyone the real story, not even my closest friends. I couldn't handle the pity. So I swallowed the shame, slapped on a fake smile, and threw myself into survival mode. I picked up 2 jobs, one in the morning stocking shelves, another delivering food late into the night. Every morning my back ached and my legs throbbed. Every night I stared at my ceiling, wondering how my life had crumbled so fast. But somewhere in that exhaustion, something shifted. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the rage. But one night, while waiting for a delivery order, I thought, if no one's going to save me, then I'll save myself. Not for their approval. Not to make them proud, but because I refused to be forgotten. I wouldn't be another almost. I wouldn't fade into the background while my parents praised my sister and rewrote history. I was done begging. I was done explaining. If they wouldn't give me a future, I'd build one so big they'd be forced to watch from the sidelines. It started with a broken faucet. I was delivering takeout one night and overheard 2 customers complaining, one about how hard it was to get a decent handyman, the other about how expensive the last guy was for a 10-minute job. I heard that same complaint again 2 nights later, and again from someone at my morning job. Something clicked. Not a light bulb moment, more like a dull flicker, but enough. I went home that night, sat on my friend's secondhand couch, opened up Craigslist, and made a post. Local fixes, small jobs, no fancy fees, just work done right. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew how to be reliable. I knew how to show up. I charged $20 flat for any task under 30 minutes. People laughed at the pricing, until they realized I actually showed up on time and didn't flake. With my first $200, I bought a cheap domain, built a basic website using a free template, and printed some business cards at the library. The design was ugly. The logo was a joke. But it worked. 1 client turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. And before long, I was juggling job shifts and repair gigs 7 days a week. I skipped parties, skipped birthdays, ate canned beans and rice for weeks straight. Every missed text, every look of pity, every fake smile from my parents echoing in my head. He gave up. Good. Let them think that. Let them think I disappeared. Because while they were busy counting me out, I was quietly building something. 1 screw, 1 socket, 1 call at a time, and I wasn't just fixing leaky sinks, I was rebuilding myself. By the end of that first year, I had over 200 recurring clients, landlords, small businesses, even retired couples who just needed a reliable guy. I memorized the town's pain points. I started batching jobs by location, timing routes to minimize gas. Efficiency became my obsession. With every dollar earned, I reinvested. Bought better tools, paid for a course on basic coding, learned how to build a simple web app so customers could book jobs without ever picking up the phone. I automated half the back end using free tools and a bit of trial and error. Soon I wasn't just the handyman kid anymore. I was running a micro startup quietly, efficiently, and profitably. No flashy investors, no Instagram story updates, just work, just growth, just momentum. But to my parents, I was still the failure. They'd tell extended family, he's doing some weird gig stuff. We don't really get it. My sister joked once at dinner. So, are you like a janitor now? I let them laugh. Because while they were too busy misunderstanding me, I was applying for a local small business grant. And I won. $15,000 in seed money. Enough to hire help. Enough to upgrade my systems. Enough to scale. That same week, I walked into the county clerk's office and registered my company name. Printed the certificate, framed it, hung it in my tiny bedroom. Then I deleted my family's group chat, turned off location sharing, and stopped calling, not out of spite, but because I was finally starting to understand something. I didn't need their approval to succeed. I just needed space from their noise long enough to hear my own voice. It had been months since I'd heard from anyone in my family. Then one day my sister Emma texted me out of the blue. "Mom says you're being dramatic. You should just let it go." I stared at the message for a while, not even sure how to respond. Let it go? Let go of being abandoned, lied to, humiliated, let go of a future they promised and then tore out from under me? She followed up with a picture of her new car, something flashy, bright red, with a caption like, "Early birthday gift." I love them so much, I knew they paid for it. Just like they paid for her school, her dorm essentials, her study abroad program. Everything I was told to earn on my own, she was simply given. I tried to explain once, gently. Told her what really happened with the tuition. How they pulled the rug out from under me. She replied, "Well, maybe they just figured you'd be fine. You're the smart one, right?" That was the moment I realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about empathy, or the complete lack of it. They had taught Emma to see my pain as an inconvenience, to rewrite history to protect their image, to believe that if I was struggling, it was my own fault for not being grateful enough. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just replied, "Take care of yourself." And then I blocked her. It wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of survival. Because loving people who only love you when you're useful isn't love at all. 3 years in, everything changed. I landed my first major partnership with a regional property management company. It started with 1 bulk contract, then 3 more within 6 months. My small side hustle? It was now a real business, with a team, a system, and a name people recognized. I upgraded the branding, launched a cleaner app interface, and hired 2 part-time employees. That quarter, we broke 6 figures in revenue. I remember looking at the payment dashboard and just staring. Not in disbelief, just in quiet, exhausted pride. Every hour, every skipped meal, every night I slept on a couch or in my car, it had built this. I didn't celebrate with a vacation. I didn't post it online. I just paid off the used Toyota I'd been driving for years and took a drive past my old neighborhood. When I turned onto my childhood street, something in me clenched. The porch lights were on. The kitchen window was open. It was the same house, same paint, same smell of cut grass, but it felt like a stranger's home. I pulled over across the street and sat in silence. No memories rushed back. No emotion swelled. I didn't feel pain, or love, or hate. I felt nothing, and in that nothingness, a thought took shape. They always said I'd come crawling back one day. What if I did? Not as a failure, but as their landlord? I didn't want revenge. Not in the dramatic, burn the house down kind of way. I wanted closure, power, a final shift in the dynamic. And I knew, deep down, they'd never see it coming. Success has a strange way of leaking. I never made announcements, never posted wins, never tried to prove anything, but eventually people started talking. Clients shared my name. Local articles mentioned the business. My face showed up on a small business spotlight piece online. Somehow it reached my parents. And instead of being proud, they panicked. Suddenly, I was getting messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. An aunt messaged me out of nowhere. "Your mom's crying. Says you've twisted everything. Says you're tearing this family apart with lies." Then came the guilt trip. "You know your parents did their best. What you're doing to them is cruel." I just sat there reading those words, heart pounding. I hadn't even done anything to them. I had built something from scratch. Stayed silent. Moved on. But apparently, my existence, my success, was a threat to their narrative. They told the family I was in some shady tech business, that I exaggerated everything, that I'd made up the whole tuition story to gain sympathy. They couldn't bear the idea that I might have succeeded without them, so they had to rewrite the story again, make me the villain, the liar, the selfish one. It hurt. Not because I cared about their approval anymore, but because I realized just how far they were willing to go to protect their image, even if it meant destroying mine. For a day or two, I spiraled, wondered if maybe I was too harsh. But then I remembered every night I went hungry, every time I begged for help, every time they chose pride over me, so I went silent again. No replies, no arguments, no explanations. I just kept building, because the best part of success isn't proving them wrong. It's knowing you don't need them to be right. It happened by accident. I was browsing listings for investment properties when I saw it. The beige siding, the cracked driveway, my childhood home. The listing was blunt. Price to sell, needs updates, motivated sellers. I clicked through the photos. Same hallway I used to tiptoe through when I stayed up too late. Same kitchen tile I'd stared at during dinner lectures. Same bedroom window I'd once stared out of, wondering if I'd ever leave. But this time, It wasn't mine. It was just an aging house, underpriced and unsold. Word was my parents were struggling. Dad had some health issues. Mom hadn't worked in years. The money they'd once spent on vacations and renovations had dried up fast. They were older now, weaker, no longer on top of the world. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something. But it wasn't joy. It wasn't revenge, it was opportunity. I called the agent through my LLC, kept my name out of it, asked a few questions, played it cool. Then I made a lowball all-cash offer, just enough to make it tempting in a sluggish market. The agent said she'd check. A few hours later, she called back. They accepted. Quick close. They just want out. I sat in silence, holding the phone. This was the house I once begged them to help me leave for college. Now they were desperate to leave it themselves, and I was the one writing the check. No mortgage. No co-signers. No help, just me. The son they said was on his own now. The failure who just bought their past. The deal closed quietly. No celebration. No ribbon cutting. Just a wire transfer, a stack of paperwork, and a set of keys to the place that used to hold my entire childhood. I drove there alone. No one knew. Not even the friend whose couch I once slept on. The front door creaked the same way it used to. The air inside smelled like old carpet and lemon-scented cleaner. Same cracked linoleum in the kitchen. Same dent in the hallway wall from the time my dad slammed a chair in anger. Same bedroom where I once taped college acceptance letters above my bed, thinking they meant something. I walked through slowly, room by room, like I was visiting a grave. And in a way, I didn't plan to live there. I'd already moved on, built a life somewhere lighter, quieter, mine. But this house, it was part of my story. So I cleaned it up, repaired what they never fixed, and listed it for rent. Before leaving, I placed one thing on the mantel above the fireplace. A framed copy of the very first dollar my startup ever made. No note, no explanation, just that. A silent monument to everything they ignored, dismissed, and gave up on. Weeks later, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. I didn't recognize the voice at first. But then he cleared his throat. "It's Dad. We heard about the house. Is this a joke? Call me back." I didn't, because for once there was nothing left to say. He once told me I'd regret walking away from family, but standing there holding those keys, I realized the only thing I ever needed to walk away from was them. A week after the voicemail, a letter showed up at my office. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. My mother's cursive, careful, controlled. It started with niceties. "We hope you're doing well. We've been thinking about you a lot." Then came the pivot. "We'd love to reconnect. Life is short. Family is forever." The second page hit harder. They were struggling. Medical bills. Mortgage debt. Retirement plans crumbling. They asked if I could help. Said they wanted to start fresh. Said, "We've all made mistakes." It was half apology, half guilt trip, like clockwork. Not once did they say, "We're sorry for what we did." Just vague admissions. Carefully worded regret without accountability. I folded the letter neatly and slid it into a drawer. Didn't tear it up. Didn't rage, just closed it. And that night I wrote one of my own. Not to send, just to breathe. It began simply, "Thank you for teaching me what betrayal feels." Like, thank you for showing me how silence can wound deeper than shouting. Thank you for proving that love with conditions isn't love at all. I thanked them for every broken promise, every door they closed, every time they looked away, because in those moments they taught me what not to become. They shaped me, not as a reflection of them, but as a rejection of them. I ended the letter with this. "I don't hate you, but I no longer need you." And I meant it. I folded that letter too, slid it in the same drawer, and walked away knowing I owed them nothing. Not money, not time, not my peace. If you've ever been lied to like this, if someone made you build your whole future around a promise, and then pulled the floor out from under you like it meant nothing, I want you to hear me when I say this. You don't owe them forgiveness. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table just because they share your last name. Not every wound gets healed with time. Some just teach you where not to walk again. They told me to be strong. They told me to be patient. But they didn't expect me to be resilient. They didn't think I'd survive without them, let alone thrive. They thought I'd crawl back. Instead, I built something they'll never understand. Not just a business, not just income, but peace, quiet, ownership of my own story. I didn't ruin them. They ruined the bond that could have meant something. They chose pride over presence, control over connection. And by the time they looked back, I was already gone. I don't need revenge. I don't need them to apologize. I don't even need them to understand what they did. What I needed, what I gave myself, was freedom. And I want you to know you can have that too. You can stop begging. You can stop proving. You can let the silence be your answer, because you don't owe them anything. You owe yourself a new future. A quiet one. A peaceful one. Built with your own hands, and when they ask how you did it without them, just smile and keep walking.